Yeah, so you said I saw her bullets or turned around. Such a nice guy.
Yesterday, this is how much of an Ohio State homer I am. I don't want to go to Dick's. I don't want to go to Walmart. I don't want to go to any other store other than down at Ohio State, down to the college stores, to get a national championship T-shirt because it makes it official. So we traveled to Columbus yesterday with the intent of eventually ending up at the College Tradition store that's on Lane Avenue, right across the street from St. John's Arena, if you're familiar with Ohio State. Kind of down the street from the closed Tommy's, which is a very tragic, traumatic event in my life. So anyway, we stopped in Worthington first to go to an antique store, and then we drove all the way down High Street into the campus area. And as I got closer and closer to the campus area, the volume of the traffic began to get bigger. What's going on? And so when we got to, remember where Casa de Pasta used to be? It was the Italian restaurant. Anyway, we got into that area of High Street. There were thousands of kids on the sidewalks. There was a pub crawl that they were having first. Of course, it's St. Patrick's Day from March 1st to the 16th. And then we got closer and closer to campus. I started seeing other people walking around with like hockey jerseys. And I was like, what's going on? So I'm just like stuck in traffic. I want to get over to Lane Avenue I want to get down to College Tradition so I can get an official T-shirt. And so anyway, long story short, there was an NHL game called the Stadium Series, and it was Ohio State. And the gates opened at 4 o'clock. We were on High Street at 4 o'clock. And so there's 100,000 people heading to the stadium, and the traffic is, clustered all the way around the campus. I didn't even try to go in College Tradition because there was no parking available. It's yours, my eyes are taken with T-shirt. And so our intent was to go to the Tommy's that's closer to campus that's still open. And so we went out there, and it took us like a half hour to get from the Tommy's on Lane Avenue to the Tommy's in Upper Arlington area because of all the traffic. It was just unbelievable. So.
They did Strict Ohio on ice.
Yeah, but they screwed up my opportunity to get a T-shirt.
If you were a hockey fan, you would have known that.
I'm not. And the thing about it, I've been to one professional hockey game, and we were sitting. My dad took me when it was the Baltimore Clippers. We're in the arena in Baltimore, and we were sitting way up. And I don't like hockey because I can't follow the game. Plus, I can't skate, so I have no relationship to the game whatsoever. But I can't imagine sitting up in the upper bowl of Ohio Stadium trying to follow a hockey game. First of all, you can't even see a football when you're up there, let alone a hockey puck. So, I have sat in the upper realms of CVAC before, and you can't, the only thing you see is these little red spots running around with silver helmets on. That was our day yesterday.
Well, just ask Paul. It's just about that violent social mentality.
So where I grew up, we got television.
Yep.
So hockey was on every night of the season on TV. And so my dad and my brother, we would watch hockey almost every night.
I never knew so many people own hockey jerseys when we were stuck in traffic.
Our friends are there. Their daughter plays like elite hockey for the Ohio Blue Jackets, like elite teams.
I don't like it.
My limit of hockey knowledge.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No.
Okay, enough of that. Welcome to the latecomers. Yesterday I destroyed 6 guys yesterday. I said, if anybody comes in late in class, you're going to have to do what we did yesterday. So those of you late, we have to make you do a wall sit. Anyway.
Have respect for your elders.
I am an elder.
Not elder anymore.
Trust me, you do not want to do a waltz.
No,
How's your butt? How's your butt?
That's
Oh,
good.
Yeah.
I know how's your butt.
Ask the elders what their butts are. That's strong. Dick has done nothing but complains. It's just.
Well, after the work, he goes, thank you, John.
Did you get it back?
No, I took it. Is this class about nice up next to you?
Okay, so we can finish with the lesson today. We're going to go into Psalm 139. In prepping for the class, and as I was turning the pages on the notes I was creating, I'm going, are you going to make it through the class? So I may not make it through the entire notes of the class, but I've set about a 5-minute video for you, which you probably won't watch the whole thing. I'll watch a little bit of it if we get to it. Before we do that, and I know this is, I was thinking about not prefacing my remarks this way, but I will. I know it's always kind of touchy to talk about cultural issues, but one of the cultural issues that 10, 15, 20 years ago that you would not think that we would be talking about would be identity, in terms of the idea of man being able to identify with one another, vice versa. But when I did a talk when Michael asked me to do a talk on scientism, or scientific materialism, so many months ago, in preparation for that class, I read a book by Carl Trueman. The title of the book is The Rise of the Modern Self, or The Triumph of the Modern Self. And I'm not going to go through the entire context of what the book talks about, but I quoted a sentence out of the book. He says, what has developed within society to make it normalized to have this identity crisis? In other words, identity transformation, where a man can confidently identify as a woman as being a normal thing, and vice versa. Well, what has happened to the culture? And so, a context of that beginning into 3 major questions that face anybody in terms of being alive. One of those questions is, who am I, or where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going? So who am I, or where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going? So to begin with, we're not going to answer those questions in the context from the Christian worldview. You know, there's the approach that I took in the talk. We're going to answer those questions right now in the context of a worldview. So how are those questions answered in the context of a worldview that we exist in today, a cultural view that we exist in today, that allows for the normalization of trans-identification for human identity?
Can you give the 4 questions?
Yeah, 3 questions. 3. Who am I? Or restated, where do I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going? So who am I? Or where do I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going? So how do we answer those questions? How does the world answer those questions? Or somebody existing in a worldview? We all exist in the world. But how does one answer those questions living outside of a Christian context or a Christian cultural world?
I'd say the who am I is whoever I want to be. You know, when I identify with whatever reason.
Anybody else?
I remember years ago, Marlo Thomas had a thing that was free to be you and me. And that was a big thing at that time, and it seems like it's still the same.
I think it was the 70s where they basically had a song, about it was, I'm allowed to be who I want to be, and you're allowed to be. I actually like the song, but who knows? Never thought I was going to do this.
You just like a voice.
Okay, well, I did. Okay.
Anybody else? It's not that we're going to spend any time talking about that particular cultural issue. It's just jumping from that into Psalm 139, because it's very applicable to Psalm 139.
Well, I feel like with that, God is your focus. The answers to those become what's going on around you. And that's always shifting.
Anybody else?
Doesn't it become, though, what am I going to be? What am I going to do for a living? Doesn't it kind of evolve into that?
It can. But more so, we're getting into personal identity. in terms of not so much the externals, like what am I going to do in a career, what am I going, where am I going to live, how am I going to, where am I, what is my social status going to be? It comes more down to who am I? What is my essence? Where did I come from? The idea of where did I come from when we couch it into scientific materialism is you came out of what? You came out of the realm of chance. You're just here by accident. Or if we couch the identity of where do we go from here, or what's our end up point? The end up point from a worldview is what? And the dirt. Your life is just over. So that makes life what? Well, worthless, but in the sense of a perspective that you know the life is going to end. Or in actuality, we want to put off death. There's not a tendency, there's a culture within the cultural mentality within the culture that we live in, is we don't want to live in the reality that we are going to die. And so, but when we do die, there are two outcomes, biblically. And I don't want to get, now we're kind of digressing off where we want to go in this lesson. But the worldview is in total antithesis to the Christian worldview in answer to those questions, and those three questions. Now, when will we answer those three questions from the Christian worldview? Hopefully we'll get them to the end at the end of the class. We have time. But they're entirely different answers from what a biblical worldview would present. Are we in agreement with that? Because a lot of you aren't talking. So, all right. So, let's read Psalm 139, and I'm going to read it in 4 sections. So I need 4 volunteers. Raise your hand or I'll choose you. Okay, Glenn, take 1 through 6, 7 through 12, or 7 through 12. Yeah, 7 through 12, 13 through 18, and 19 through 24.
What did you point to?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm pointing to Glenn.
Okay.
What's her name? Doma.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
So in each of those verses, what I'd like for you, as you read through those verses, what I'd like for you to do is put an emphasis verbally on the personal pronouns of self. Okay? So go ahead and start.
You have searched me, O Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out, my coming, my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before 1 through 4?
1 through 6.
Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain.
Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you.
Great.
For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that fully well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you.
If only you, God, would slay the wicked away from me. You who are bloodthirsty. They speak of you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I hate or not hate those who hate you, Lord, and abhor for those who are in rebellion against you. I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting.
The foundational kind of topic that the author of the book that we're using couches this in is the idea of pursuing. And so we're going to talk about the idea of pursuing in terms of pursuing God, and then talk about each of the sections in the context. What I'd like for you to do next is do a little paraphrasing as we've done in the past. We're going to do a little bit differently. What I'd like for you to do is to take each of those four sections, 1 through 6, 7 through 12, 13 through 18, and 19 through 24, and paraphrase it in 3 words. Limit yourself to 3 words. And if you want to work in partners, you can.
I figured you stole that too.
Raise your hand if you need more time. Are you ready? We have to welcome Jenny from Temple.
Thanks.
Welcome, Jenny. Okay, if you're still writing, just I can tell I can write. I'm just kind of listening. So for the first 6 verses, in 3 words, bless you. How would you paraphrase that in 3 words? Pleasure.
You know me.
You know me. Very succinctly, very strong theme of you know me. How about 7 through 12?
You are everywhere.
You are everywhere. You surround me. 17 through 18. 13, 18. Thank you. 13 through 18.
You created me.
You created me. You formed me. You molded me. And then 17 through 20, 18 through 24.
Please lead me.
Lead me. You lead me.
Know my heart.
Know my heart. And in the psalmist's context is that in what word? It was, and some of the versions may not have that word, but fixed it.
Test.
Test me. You test me. So we can break this psalm down into 4 different kind of sections. Number 1, you know me. Number 2, you surround me, or you are present. Number 3 is that you formed me. And number 4, you test me. And so we're going to go through each of those sections and just discuss them in the context of what they mean to us in the relationship that David's talking about with his relationship with God, and also in the context of the pursuing God, in the pursuit of understanding as far as relationships are concerned. So let's go with the first one. You know me. To start off, there's a Hebrew word there, and I don't know Hebrew from a hole in the ground, but just from the context of just educating myself to prepare for the song. The word that's used for knowledge or knowing is yada, yada, Y-A-D-A. And within the scope of the Bible, it's used, especially in the Old Testament, it's used many, many times. Obviously, in the Old Testament word Hebrew. That word yada means what? When we talk about knowledge from the Hebrew context, what kind of knowledge is it? Very intimate. You go back to Genesis. Adam knew Eve. Well, he knew Eve's name, but he just didn't know her. He knew her good enough to be intimate with her. And so the idea of God knowing us is a very intimate knowledge of who we are. Who knows you? Well, who knows you intimately? Outside the realm of marriage, if you're married, who knows you really intimately? Outside the realm of your husband or wife. Who's another person that knows you intimately? Now, I don't mean that in physical context. I mean that just in an essence, kind of, in terms of who knows you in a very, very personal way. Not rhetorical.
My daughter.
Your daughter. Okay. Somebody else.
My parents.
Okay.
My sister.
Your sister. Okay. So I'm not asking this in terms of, we're hammering on relationships here, but within our lives, we have somebody who knows us. We're married, our spouses know us intimately. They know us. But even in those relationships, do they know us? Do they know the inner kind of hiding places in our lives? Do they really know everything about us?
Mostly, anybody knows what we want them to know.
Right. Yes. Make sure that's good. How many do you put Facebook? How many are on Facebook? Okay, you have 15 push-ups. Just kidding.
Question how often I
If you're on Facebook, people put the mess out there on Facebook. What is on Facebook?
Some people do.
I was going to say, some people are ready to go there.
What is the common? Is it common to post your life mess on Facebook? No. What do you post? What's posted?
The highlight reel.
The highlight reel. You get this happy reel that everything is what for life? Everything in your life is going fine, great, wonderful. And that's the perception that you want to put out there as far as who I am. This is how great my life is. But yet, hidden in the corners is what? The mess. But guess who knows the mess? God does. God does. And we try so hard to do what with that mess? We try to hide it. But we can't, and we're going to talk about hiding things from God in the next one too, but we can't hide from God. But yet, what does God perceive our mess? How does he perceive the mess?
A work in progress.
A work in progress. Okay. Turn to John 1, and somebody be prepared to read verses 43 through 47. I'm going to get ahead of myself in the notes here. But God knows us completely. And the question I'm going to put out to you, and you can answer it on a piece of paper, is how does that impact us? That God knows us completely. He even knows the messes that we're in, the messes that are in our lives that we keep, supposedly we think we're keeping hidden from others, but it's not hidden from his eyes. It's not hidden from his knowledge. Somebody would read John 1, 43 through 51. I'll give you context. Philip is taking Nathanael to see Jesus. So, you want to pick that up.
The next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, "Follow me." Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." "Nazareth, can anything good come from there?" Nathanael asked. "Come and see," said Philip. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, "Here is a true Israelite, in whom there is nothing false." "How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." Then Nathanael declared, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus said, "You believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree. You shall see greater things than that." He then added, "I tell you the truth. You shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man."
How did the knowledge of Nathanael from Jesus impact you? Boom! It's one of those boom moments in life where he recognizes who he is standing before in terms of the knowledge that Jesus had of him. And Jesus is obviously God, and Jesus already knows Nathanael. When did Jesus know Nathanael? Even before Nathanael's parents knew about him, right? And he knows everything about Nathanael. He knows everything about us also. And in that, how does that impact our lives? How does that impact under the umbrella of the idea of pursuing God? If he knows us that way. Juanita's about to say something. The mouth was open.
I am glad that he knows me, because I don't even always know myself. So be better.
Good, thank you. You stepped into the last thing that we want to talk about in this context. Good job. Anybody else? How does it impact you that God knows you completely?
When I was a youngster, I'd be getting in a little mischief. My mother would say, "God sees you." I'd go, "Uh-oh."
It kind of going off of that, I mean, in a way it's comforting, but in a way it's kind of scary.
Right.
It wants me to be a better person.
Okay. Anybody else?
I guess I'm looking at it differently. I'm looking at, he knows me, I want to know him.
Okay. That's the idea of pursuing. Let's read verse 6. Somebody read verse 6.
Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain.
Right. The idea that God knows us completely. He just does not know us. He knows what? He knows his entire creation as intimately as he knows us. That knowledge is unfathomable to us. How can that be? And so, in the idea of pursuing God, we have to do what with the perception of God? God is what from this context? Big fancy word that Tozer uses in his knowledge of the holy. God is what?
Omnipotent.
Omnipotent. Omnipresent. In this case,
Omnipresent.
Omniscient, in terms of the knowledge base, in terms of knowing everything. And so, within that knowledge, what David is expressing in verse 6, that's beyond our comprehension of that capacity of having that kind of knowledge. And so, and I don't use this word in the sense of trembling in fear, I use this word in the sense of fearing God in the terms of awesome, the awesome presence of God, knowing he knows us that well. He knows us completely in that entirely. Okay. Any other comments on that? Because we'll move on to the Okay, so let's look at verses 7 through 12. God surrounds us. When you were growing up, you played hopefully you all played hide and seek. You didn't have a tragic life, tragic home life. So what was the best hiding place? If you can remember way back when, what was the best hiding place? What you had?
Top shelf in the corner.
Top shelf. That's the best. I don't think you can go any farther. Were you ever found? Anybody got a better one than that?
Under the bed.
Under the bed? Okay.
Our daughter hid in the dryer in the Hogan's house.
I was going to say, hopefully not the refrigerator downstairs. Okay, so we've all played hide and seek, and we all tried to hide from, the kids who were trying to find us in the game. And so we all chose hiding places to be able to conceal ourselves and not being found. Well, in verses 7 through 12, what does God say about His presence? Well, what does David say about God's presence?
We can't go anywhere.
We can't go anywhere, right? God surrounds us with His presence. And so from that context, he's describing God as being omnipresent. He's everywhere. And so why do we, and this goes back to the previous point from the first 6 verses, even in the essence of hiding. Before we talk about us, let's talk about 2 instances in the Bible. What are 2 instances, very famous instances, where individuals try to hide from God? Just from the top of your head. Jonah. Okay, and so because of Jonah's attempt to hide from God, God did what with him? Put him in a fish. And then there's one other one. Adam and Eve. Why did Adam and Eve hide? Well, let's go back to Jonah. Why did Jonah run and hide?
He didn't want to
He didn't want to be obedient. He didn't want to go through the persecution that he knew he was going to go through by going to Nineveh and asking him to be doing what God had asked him to do. Why did Adam and Eve hide? Shame from their sin, and they put on what? Well, they hid because of why God put fig leaves on. But why did they hide?
They were naked.
In their perception, they were naked. God created them as to be what? Naked. And God created them in the perfect way that He wanted them to be. And yet, because of their sin, they hid in their nakedness because they were ashamed. Why do we hide from God? Shame. Can we hide from God? No. So what's the better approach? Well, maybe we go back to a question. I'll lead into that question a little bit better. What causes us to hide from God? Other than shame. What leads to that shame? We are doing what? Guilt. Anything else?
Fear of disappointing him.
I'm sorry?
Fear of disappointing him.
Okay. I'm going to put 2 kids in fear tomorrow because they cheated on their test. Okay, so they're not going to confess to it, I know.
They're going to know.
But they're going to know. It's because their grades didn't make it into, all their friends' grades were already into that test, and they're wondering, why isn't my grade in there? So I'm hoping they're sweating bullets over the weekend. But we all do the same thing. We cheat. We cheat God with what? Sin, our behavior. We cheat God with our actions. And so when we cheat, our first response to that is to hide from Him. What is the first response we should have to that? When we're recognizing our sin and recognizing that we're cheating? Confession. Because why? He's there. He already knows. He already knows that you've sinned. We can't hide the sin from Him. And so it's best just to come humbly before Him and say, I've done it again. Whether it's something that doesn't happen on a regular basis or something that we struggle with on a continual basis. Why does He know that? Because 1 through 6, He knows us intimately. And He surrounds us. He surrounds us. Let's go to the idea of surrounding. Anybody here ever traveled to China? I never have, probably never will. But in terms of their treatment of their people, in terms of surrounding them. What is China? Oh,
It's oppressive.
it's oppressive. It's a surveillance state. Now, we don't live in a surveillance state, but there are a lot of cameras on the road. Okay? There's a lot of cameras in public nowadays. Why is China a surveillance state? Control. So when we think about, one of the mistakes that we can make, if we're thinking about God is everywhere, is that we're thinking that God is a surveillance state. What's the difference between China and God in terms of being everywhere?
God is benevolent.
God is benevolent.
God is for us.
God is for us. Why is he there?
For our good.
He's not oppressing us. He's for our good. And so David recognizes that. He recognizes that by God's presence, we are set what? We are set free. We're not oppressed because God is always there. God is always there to offer his grace. And so that gives us freedom. Not freedom to sin, but gives us freedom from the result of sin, freedom from the shame of sin, freedom from the guilt that we'll carry around if we don't have the opportunity to confess that sin. Because God is always there and he knows us intimately. I hate everyone. Okay. So let's move on. Let's go to verses 13 through 18. So we said that those verses summarize what?
You made me.
You made me. You formed me. Neil, I'm going to use Neil as an example here. Well, first of all, how many of you have ever made anything from scratch? Now, I don't mean like a cake or anything, but you can be, well, cake too. I guess in baking. How many of you have made anything from scratch? Neil has built cars from scratch. Okay, so I hate Neil. Not only does he make cars from scratch, but he makes them look beautiful. And so he has this great ability to be able to do that. And if I would ask him anything about any part on any car that he'd ever put together, he would be able to tell me about it. He would be able to know exactly what bolt he used to attach whatever to whatever to whatever to make it work. So he knows that car intimately because he did what? He formed it. He formed it. Many, many years ago when I was in landscaping, I did Chuck Eakins landscape. Chuck and Elaine Eakins landscape at their house in Wadsworth. And I ended up having a conversation with Chuck. If you knew Chuck, he was very, very talented, and he built the house. He put every nail into that house. And he even said it in those terms when I asked him, he said, who built the house? He said, well, I put every nail into it. And so he knew every intimate detail of that house. Well, God forms us, and he does what? He made us. He knows every intricate detail of our lives in terms of the physical nature and also in terms of the spiritual nature of our lives. I have a quick thing here. Let me get a video. This is a video I show in class. I'm not going to show all 9 minutes of it because I can't do that. I won't show the ad. About the body deodorant. And I don't have any sound to this. I'm not sure why there's no sound. There was sound previous to that. Anyway, this gentleman here is a MIT math professor. I don't know if he's still at MIT or not. Stop talking. Oh, no. So anyway, he's an MIT math professor, and him and another guy who designed scanning technologies scan progressions, conception to birth of a pregnant woman, or different pregnancy stages. And so he used the logarithms to create this video from conception to birth. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I just want you to capture the idea of formation. And I wish the music was, I don't know why, is it volume on? I don't know, where's the volume?
Yeah, on the side.
Okay. Whenever I play that video, I have a hard time talking to my class on birthday. And one of the things that he says, the researcher says at the end of the video, or during his comments at the end of the video, he goes through all the different things that are going on through the progression of the development of the fetus and the embryo of the baby. And one of the things he indicates that there's one part there where it shows that from the first several weeks of growth, you're growing so fast that if that growth rate would continue all the way up through birth, you would weigh 1.5 tons. That's how fast you're growing. Now, in terms of that growth, I know I'm getting this is your biology lesson for the day. There are multiple genetic switches that are going on and off and on and off and on and off in order to form all the different cells and tissues and organs that are being formed at the correct time. We have over 60,000 miles of blood vessels in our bodies. Every one of those are placed in the appropriate place that they need to be. We have a protein in our eyes, or we have a protein in our body called collagen that keeps our tissues strengthened. That protein looks rope-like, but in the eyes, it's gridded, so it can be transparent. And so everything that he's bringing out here, he calls this beyond the scope of mathematics. He calls it divine. This is how God formed us. And that knowledge of God forming us in such a perfect manner should motivate us to do what? And this is David's point for this whole particular section. Believe. You know, if we can't see this video, if we can't see this and come away with a reverent attitude about who we are, it is just incomprehensible because of the intimacy and the, not only just that, but the biology that's going on there to create who we are. Not only that, this is where the omnipotent aspect of this comes in. And David says in those verses, he knew us, he formed us when? Before you were in the mother's womb. He had advanced knowledge of you before you were in your mother's womb. And that, in and of itself, is something beyond the scope of human comprehension. For us to understand how that can be. But not only did he know us as we were being formed in the womb, but he also knew us even before he put us. I tell my kids at school, when we talk about this, that your conception is a 1 in 70 trillion possibility. Genetics, in terms of the idea, is a game of chance. From a godly perspective, genetics is not a game of chance. You're here for a purpose. You're not here by accident. Because God knew your formation even before he physically formed you in your mother's womb. I don't have time to get to the last point. The summation of this, and we go to the fourth point, God tests us, is that the overall theme of that psalm is what? God does what? God loves us. He loves us because he knows us, because he surrounds us, because he created us, and because he wants us to walk with him in the everlasting way. And that should motivate us to do what? To pursue him. In what manner? In what manner should we pursue him? Haphazardly, apathetically, or passionately? All of our heart. Passionately pursue him. For all those reasons. The second bell is about to ring, and I just wrapped up quicker than I wanted to, but thank you for your comments.